Good afternoon. It's Marilyn Muir, the New Earth Nurse, and I thought that I would make a video today just because in my mind I am seeing lots more coming out about MAID, which is medical assistance in dying, which is legal in Canada. There's also European countries, the Netherlands, and some states in the United States and I think that France actually just did the first tier. I think that they've legislated, made it not illegal, because that is actually what happened in Canada in 2016. So I want to describe a bit because I'm seeing more posts online about euthanasia prevention, people speaking up. And it's interesting to read the comments. I actually put a comment in, and somebody told me that I ate shit because I don't agree with it, that we're conscious beings. Um, and many people seem to believe that it's going to ease suffering because it's only for the terminally ill. Yes, if it was really what it was supposed to be, if it was actually running the way that they said that it would in 2016, when uh, it was taken out. It was the legislation was changed that it was not a homicide, because before that it was a homicide if a doctor. So they just rewrote that legislation. So it started with one tier, and at the time I thought it was a good thing too. It was really up until 2020 that I changed my tune. 2021, actually, I watched them change the legislation again, but we'll go back to the 2016. So in 2016, the legislation was changed so that it was not homicide, so that you could have suicide from your doctor. Wasn't that they gave you there are some states in the United States where they'll give you the drugs, you do it yourself. In Canada, the doctor will do it for you, nurse practitioner too, and I think RNs. And it was only supposed to be for people that had been, you know, hugely suffering with a terminal illness, and they were imminent death was coming, right? So these people were really in poor, poor shape, right? And over the period of time leading up to 2016, remember, I've been in healthcare 40 some odd years, the cuts to palliative care, and that is a good thing to know. There was lots of cuts were made to palliative care, and then MAID came into being, tier one. Then they changed that and they opened it up, right? The definition of what is suffering, imminent death. Then they started to take people in and find loopholes around how they could get around some of that wording, right? And then tier two came in 2021 after, you know, my opinions on what happened in 2020. It's just a continuation of what the MAID is, was the beginning of, well, not good things for human beings. Um, so then they changed it, became, the slippery slope that people from mental health associations to people with disabilities, right, were saying this isn't good, this is a slippery slope, and that's exactly what's happened. Now it's well over 100,000 people, mainly white, by the way, have had MAID, and not all of them had terminal illness. Some of them didn't have a place to live. Some of them had maybe eyesight problems related to diabetes that was poorly controlled. Some of them had no homes. Like, look at Canada. We have people living in the parks year round, in the winter, in Canada, with chronic illness that has been caused by a multiplicity of things happening, the social determinants of health being one of them taken away. So, now, coming up to 2027, there was a sort of an inquiry into it, right? Looking at, we don't think we should recommend this, right? The Parliament. And that maybe we shouldn't, we should pause on it. And they did pause on it for a while, but it actually comes up legislation for people that have only mental health problems, Mature minors, which means anybody over 12 without their parental, they're mature so that they can decide themselves without the parent. The parent has no involvement in that. And advanced directives for people that fearful of dementia. I do not agree with any of what I see. I believe it's medical murder. We've crossed a boundary. It maybe came in for all the right reasons, but that's not. I mean, there's Policy Horizons, which writes white papers. It's future, looks at future, sees huge trillions of dollars saving for voluntary euthanasia in older people, disabled people, people with mental health problems, addiction, and Aboriginal. And they even looked at and modeled what it would be like for non voluntary people, right? Non voluntary. So that you don't, like it's mandatory. You reach a certain age or you've got this, it's mandatory you have it. And more trillions of dollars. What people fail to understand is that the health system that you think you have and the health system that you have actually have are two different things, right? You are a commodity in the health system. It is a healthcare corporation, giant, makes trillions of dollars, the death care system. And this bringing in death as a treatment option is all part of it, right? It's all part of it. And it started during COVID with the essential and the non essential, right? So now they have stigmatized groups of people, right? And using very, very advanced mind control. And we're really easy. I mean, that's part of what I do, health counseling and teaching people how to overcome self sabotage because of the programs that have been downloaded in you, right? That's not a conspiracy. It's the way that we work heavily within the first 7 years, right? We are programmed. It's the survival mechanism in us, right? In our subconscious mind. It's how it works, so that we learn things quickly, right? And so that we survive. And it will follow the herd, this subconscious mind. So they've been using it. They have nudge units. The Health Canada has the behavioral intervention teams, right? That's applied behavioral psychology. It's the principles of learning to change behavior. So, what I saw in these responses about MAID, well, it's only for people that are trying, and they should have the right, and they should have the control over it, and it's beautiful and it's dignified. The same talking points that actually come from Dying with Dignity. It's part of what you have internalized in, and it comes too with our fear of dying and fear of pain. Guess what? You're not going to get through life without pain. You make it suffering. We worry so much about pain, and we don't want to. We want to stay in a comfort coma, right? I have to tell you that most of the deaths that I saw, and I witnessed an awful lot of deaths because I worked with older people, right? I worked with mental health people. I worked with people with disabilities. I worked in all of them, right? I never witnessed one where the person was an absolute. We took care of them. That's what palliative care was, and it was superior, right? It was superior. It came from the heart and it worked with the spirit because guess what? You're just not a piece of meat. You're not just this body. The body dies, the consciousness stays. It's not a. I will never believe that. I will never believe that it's a product of your mind, that we're not spiritual, that human life does not have sanctity, the sanctity of human life, right? That it's sacred and that birth and death are sacred passages. We leave the body behind and there are enough near death, credible near death experiences. Yeah. Like if you're blind if you don't see it. So what is this actually doing when you MAID people? Now, I'm going to share her link because I really like her. Kelsi Sheren, right? She's an Afghani vet from Canada who had huge post traumatic stress disorder, right? hearing loss. She would have qualified for MAID right now. She and veterans are going to veterans and offering one of the Paralympics. She needed a ramp. They offered her MAID. This is happening everywhere. You have to understand they're going to catch you when you're down, when you go into a hospital and you're sick or you've fallen or you haven't stopped drinking when you're old. Maybe you should look at that. Or you haven't changed your lifestyle, right? You're dependent on the white coats for your health, which isn't health. And now you've got them nudging you towards death. You go in there, you've already had the seeds of information. It only takes a couple of repetitions of something to lodge it in your subconscious mind that it's what everybody else is doing. And as we could see over COVID, people follow what everybody else is doing. It's only the really strong that will stand up and say, no, that's wrong. What happened back then was wrong. What's happening now is just pure evil. It's like the devil's parading down the main street in Canada and nobody can see it because they've normalized what is not normal. You know, the exact same legislations in Canada were enacted in Nazi Germany, right? The elderly, the non-essential, right? And it was done in compassion. It's compassion. No, it's not. I'm going to tell you, drug addiction is not terminal. Mental health is not, these people I worked with, right? Old age can be enjoyed. You can live a life when you're older. That is another whole thing that I'm going to get into. Do we actually age the way that we see ourselves aging, or are we nudged along to age a little quicker, right? To believe what we're showing out there about what it's like to be old? Well, I would say no, because I guess I'm old. I have the target on my back. That's hence why I don't live in Canada, right? I live in a country that still has the sanctity of life, a Latin American country, right? So, I don't go for any of this, and I don't think anybody should. I think you should understand what's going on and what you're being fed, right? And that much of it has to do with repetitive content about what is normal in your culture, and it's not normal. This is not normal. And as I just said about Nazi Germany, it was the same legislations, right? Under the guise of compassion. Nothing could be less. We don't know what it does, right? You don't do autopsies on people that have had MAID, but the same drugs are used in people that are being executed in the United States, right? And they do have autopsies, and what they find, these guys, I don't believe, get the paralytic that the Canadians do, right? The euthanasia people, not the criminals being, put down. Um, and their lungs are expanded with fluid. So there's much belief that it's like waterboarding. You drowned in your own fluids. It doesn't always take the first time. Sometimes they have to do it twice. Um, that you drowned in your own fluids and you're paralyzed and you can't do anything about it. What do you think that takes out in the world? And if you are constantly bombarded with stuff that when you get old, you're a burden or you're this or you're that, when you got mental health problems, it's terminal, nothing can help you. When you have, drug addiction, you're terminal, there's nothing that anything can do for you. Do you start to believe it? Does it start to become self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That you're going to reach out to that because we have stolen hope. Imagine a system that is driven by AI and the technocrats and the corporations and profit is stealing your hope, right? You are the healer. That's why the placebo effect works and the nocebo effect. So if somebody speaks over you, a diagnosis that AI is given them, because none of these fuckers can think. Sorry, I'm trying not to swear, but they use AI. And the AI, they have to use AI in the hospital. It's AI that is giving the medical directives. So they don't even look at you like a person. You are a thing. And I knew that when I worked with them. Now, luckily, I worked 15 years out in the community with people, keeping them out of hospitals, right? People with mental health and the older people, because guess what? They were marginalized way back then, too, in the 90s the 2000s, right? They didn't want those marginalized people in their glorious hospitals because the hospitals were, they always have been businesses, right? But more of the, what can I say, corporations and pharmaceutical companies and medical device, the $1 trillion industry got into it, and there was to be no compassion in any of it. Yeah, this is efficiency. If they can't make us lots of money with surgery and drugs and shit like that, and we have to steal their hope from them, we get them into that. We get them, and they, somebody's getting paid for that. A doctor or a nurse and the pharmaceutical companies are getting paid to kill you. And now they've started the rumblings of they're going to take your organs. They've already been taking your organs. And they take organs out of live people. So if you're paralyzed and if you're in suffering and you have these drugs and your consciousness is still aware, because it still is, tell me, what kind of a takeout is that out of this world, of this dimension, where contrast it to palliative care. And I've done lots of palliative care and sat with people that I knew that were dying, my son being one of them, right? And we gave care and comfort and relief and painkillers. Yes, painkillers. A lot of times they wouldn't give them. We'd have people come into the ER. This was like in, as it was starting to go insane with the ruthless people. They wouldn't give them any, people would be palliatives. The doctor wouldn't give them any painkillers, right? They'd be there for hours. Yeah, that's compassion. You guys are so compassionate. You're just looking for the blue slip that you can make money from, right? I don't care what anybody says. It's not based on compassion. I didn't see any compassion there. I was compassion. I had some of them come up and tell me, right, we should be doing it your way, but nah. But I could usually talk a good talk and advocate for my clients, right? In the community and in the emergency department, because I worked in the emergency department. I was the geriatric nurse and I worked with all the marginalized people that came in. They didn't have a social worker, right? I didn't want them to come into the hospital either because I know that hospitals kill people that are marginalized. Right? Can you imagine eating that garbage food? That's health. Oy, oy, oy. My God. If that's how, isn't it funny what mind control can get you to believe? It can get you to believe that drugs are health. Look around. Do you see a healthy population? Right? That sunlight is poison, right? That it's okay to drink. That it's okay to be. I read one book that I just got on, being healthy over 50. It's okay to be mediocre and 4 cups of coffee a day. And oh, yeah, have a couple of glasses of wine. If you want to be healthy, I would suggest that you don't do that. And my suggestion to you is that your health is your responsibility, and you need to stay out of that system at any age, at any cost. The system, the emergency departments, are for if you're in a car accident, of course, right? If Lord forbid there's some emergency that comes up, yes, emergency medicine is top of the line. But if you are depending on that for your health and well being, or your doctor who literally their disdain for older people and don't think that they don't, because I've seen it. And I talked to somebody I used to work for about how her doctor, right, because she's 70, 70 ain't old, but they're making 50 look old. And there's a thought behind why they're doing this, right? There is a thought behind why they're doing this. I I wish I could make people see. I wish I could make people see that they are the power in their lives, but they give it away. And then it's weaponized against you. I would rather run away and get shot in the back than have somebody made me. If I was that suicidal, I would rather be suicidal on my own and not have the government kill me with God knows what, right? I and that's from somebody that's been in the system. And I'm going to tell you something. Most of the nurses don't agree with it, right? Most of the people that are working in the system now are either completely brain dead and mind controlled. They're psychopaths, right? You're dealing with psychopathy and serial killers. When you have people that brag about killing 1,000 people and they enjoy it, you are dealing with a serial killer. Now, I know we can't turn back the legislation because that never happens, right? But you people need to understand. You're right. It's your choice. You go ahead if you want that, but it's not my choice. And is it really, are you really choosing? Or have you been nudged? Have you had programs downloaded into your subconscious mind, which is super easy to do, right? And you are making decisions from that and walking to your own death, right? Just like in Germany, only they rounded people up there. Here they don't have to round you up. You will walk to it. One little thing, we're all going to die. It's what happens. None of us get out alive except for the tech bros. Yes, they have frozen their brains and their penises and whatever, and they're going to bring it all back to life because, we're just, those people are insane. The people that are offering, these people are involved with your healthcare. It's AI, it's all technology, transhumanism, technocracy. I don't go for it all. It's humans. Humans need humans, and humans need care. And abortions in Canada, oh, just another thing to, if you want to see where the mentality is, it's up to delivery. So a full-term baby, if you don't want it, they'll kill it. They'll kill your baby and use all the parts of it, right? Because they get paid for all of that. And that's the next thing with MAID, the organ harvesting, because it is another $1 trillion business. So you know what? Think before you and research everything, and for God's sakes, don't believe your government. Your government is not your friend. They're not there to do good things for you. As God is my witness, they're not. And all the institutions that you thought were there to help you, come on, they've all been infiltrated. The systems have been inverted. Pontronology, political pontronology, these bad actors, right? And people who just go along to get along and follow the herd and don't question where their ideas come from or question what they are, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to say today about MAID. I don't like it. I think people need to educate themselves about what's really going on. That unfortunately in Canada now we can't get palliative care. Palliative care is gone, right? Unless you pay for it yourself. The only thing you're going to get from the government is MAID, and they're going to come at you at a vulnerable time and offer you, right? And there was just, I'll leave you on this last note. This older lady, she's in a long-term care home. She had agreed to it, and then she changed her mind, right? And then her power of attorney, who knew that she had changed her mind, right, went away for a vacation, and the long-term care home euthanized her when she was away against her consent. They murdered her. I don't think doctors wouldn't do it. I have met some doozies. I am of the mind that little letter that they write, the little essay that they got to write to get in. If you don't have psychopathic tendencies, you aren't becoming a doctor. I stay away from them. I'm my own expert on my health. Good food, good water, get rid of the poisons, all poisons. I take no drugs. I work out at the gym. I'm 67. I feel like I'm 47. And I don't do birthdays because I think that that's another part of getting into your subconscious mind and sort of programming you on who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave. Yeah, I don't get that. So take care. That's kind of what I had to say today about MAID because I saw it. And as I said, I haven't made a video for a while. I'm going to start getting back into it. Sometimes I just have to stop and watch what's going on in the world and let it soak in and go from there. Okay, take care.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to my very first solo episode. I'm going to be chatting with you guys today about a very depressing topic, let's be honest. We're going to talk about MAID. We're going to break down MAID the best way I know how, provide you guys with a little bit of insight as to why you guys need to be paying attention to this, and then hopefully educate a few of you. Now, I'm going to go through MAID the best of my ability, understanding that I'm probably going to miss something here, understand that I'm probably going to make some people upset the way I speak about this, and understand that I'm not doing any of that to upset, harm, cause distress to anyone, but to bring to the forefront the reality of what MAID is and really what is happening in Canada, why I believe you should be concerned, and where you can go to potentially stop this from happening, call your representatives, make your voices known. And I'll be completely honest with you. A lot of you are going to be hearing about this for the first time, where you've never really maybe understood what MAID is or heard about it before. But just rest assured, I'm going to do my best to break it down for you. And then all of the holes you guys have, send me the messages. I'm happy to go back through and make sure we provide everything. They're in the show notes are going to be every piece of link and data that I'm speaking to here today. So you guys can go and dive in and look at them yourself. We also have an episode on this show with Alicia Duncan, who is one of the daughters of Donna Duncan, who was ultimately killed by MAID. And I believe it was done. I just don't believe it was good. So we're going to get into all of this with you guys here, all these papers. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, well, you should give this a watch. So, all right, let's get right into it. Here's my stance and how I feel on MAID, and then I'm going to tell you guys why I feel this way. For a long time, I was a big believer in MAID. For a long time, I was a really big believer in that you should be able to have body autonomy, but Canada has made it clear that body autonomy no longer exists here. I've always been a big believer that if you were going through something terminal or you struggling in your life where it is inoperable, uncurable, anything incurable, any of the things that this world sometimes forces at us, I believe you should have compassion and empathy and care. Part of the problem is when the governments that be decide to use the words compassion and empathy and weaponize them into using them to get you to believe that it should be okay to kill mature minors, which are children down to the age of 12 with parent consent. When they start saying and having the conversation about potentially allowing you to enact MAID on newborns if there's a cognitive deficiency, whether or not you like it or not, Canada is expanding its, your access to be able to have assisted suicide. I'm not somebody that will stand by and allow people to be killed when there are plenty of ways and reasons that we should be doing our best to help others thrive and live, because you can heal from things, but you have to be here to heal. So let's get into it. Okay. Here in Canada, if you guys are listening everywhere else, I'm talking about medical assistance in dying. This is in Canadian legislation. It started in February of 2015. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled in the Carter versus Canada that part of the criminal code would need to change to satisfy the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The part prohibiting medical assistance in dying would no longer be valid. The Supreme Court gave the government until June 6, 2016 to create a new law. This came because of Carter versus Canada. Now, this was an individual who wanted to use MAID and needed, well, it was illegal in Canada until 2016. So Canada's law on the medical assistance in dying legislation started to evolve and it has changed. This is where it gets dicey, right? So when people say we started a law or we put a bill in place to help people die and to do it from a place of compassion, because Kelsi, you've never been in so much pain where you've wanted to die, right? So when you put bills in place like this, you don't get to choose after the bill is put in place what's amended, how often it's amended, and frankly, what that'll look like down the road. You're opening the gates to, or a Pandora's box. And that's really what this bill has done. Around the world, we have allowed for MAID to happen. Plenty of countries, the Netherlands and so on, they use MAID. Canada has been enacting MAID now since 2016, and arguably people are using it at a pace that's a little scary over other countries. I do know, I believe it was in 21 that the Netherlands had a higher rate than Canada, but since then Canada has started to skyrocket. And the reason is because Canada is amending and changing the law again. And this is what I said, where you don't get to choose what walks through. You do not get to choose what that looks like. And you do not get to choose how far that bill or law will go. It really scares me because I was just in London and I went to the Imperial War Museum and we were looking at the World War II section. And a lot of the things that the Nazis were using verbiage wise throughout their propaganda during the 39 to 45, they were promoting things along the lines of eugenics. If you're not sure what eugenics is, we'll put the link in for the definition. You guys can go from there. But all throughout that time, they were convincing the population to use eugenics. And they were doing it by saying that it was empathetic and compassionate to the people that are struggling, that they are using it on, the mentally ill, the disabled, the World War I veterans. It was compassionate and it was empathetic. But Kelsi, wouldn't you want to be able to end your life if you were in so much pain? Well, if I want to do that, I'll do it on my own time. I don't want the government involved in pushing that. Now, the difference is Canada is starting to push it. And this is where you may go, Kelsi, they wouldn't push that. They can't do that to people, but they can and they have since 2019. We now have proof and have had proof for quite a while now from other veterans, Canadian veterans. There's audio recordings where MAID is being given as an option instead of post-traumatic stress treatment or traumatic brain injury treatment. I've heard them. I have them myself. It's terrifying. Then you also have individuals like Christine Gauthier, the Paralympian, the Olympian, the partially paralyzed athlete from the Canadian Forces as an artillery gunner. She was offered MAID, all because she wanted a ramp put into her home so she could have access using her wheelchair, as well as new wheels for her wheelchair, which she's fully entitled to. Canada loves to use the veteran population and the military as guinea pigs. We've seen it before with vaccines. We've seen it before with options like this. Part of the problem is a lot of people want to say that the things I'm saying are fear-mongering, when in reality, the things that I'm saying, frankly, are truth and are terrifying. Just because it is sounding fearful, at no point does it mean that it's not true. So let's take a look at what these bills kind of represent, where they've started, like I said, back in 2016 with Carter versus Canada. The former bill C7 had stayed this way for a little while, and they were working with provinces and territories, and they were making sure that anybody that enacted or wanted MAID, there were appropriate protections put into place. And eligible people would receive the MAID or medical assistance in dying in accordance to the new law with Carter versus Canada. They started to update this bill in 2020. On October 5th, former Bill C7, sorry, I was so used to talking about Bill C11. Bill C7, they had introduced the former bill, an act to amend the criminal court medical assistance in dying in Parliament. The bill proposed the changes to Canada's law on medical assistance in dying. And these changes were introduced in response to the Superior Court of Quebec in 2019. That decision found two areas of the original 2016 law to be unconstitutional. You think? The reasonable foreseeable of natural death, eligible criteria for the criminal code, and the end-of-life criterion from Quebec's Act respecting end-of-life care. The changes were also informed by experience with medical assistance in dying from Canadians public and feedback from over 300,000 people during the January to February 2020 consultations. These included experts, practitioners, stakeholders, members of the public, and they had heard testimony from over 120 witnesses. Here's the thing. We can, say all we want that they were willing to listen to the public about this, and this is what the public wanted. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that the regular everyday person realizes what MAID really means and how it can be pushed and how it can be used. the amount of doctors and individuals who have contacted us ever since we started speaking about MAID publicly and telling us that they are having their doctors now in hospital prior to operation, pushing them. These are elderly. These are individuals who have what I would consider curable issues, i.e. depression, fibromyalgia, mental health disorders that are manageable, completely manageable, but for some reason, the government wants to deem them an eligible criteria now, starting in March, for MAID, which blows my mind. And we can get into that in a little bit here. But here's what's got wild. In 21, they were making changes, and these changes they revised eligible criteria for obtaining MAID. They changed safeguards for eligible people whose natural death is considered reasonable and foreseeable. And they expanded. This is what I'm talking about. They expanded the framework. They also expanded the framework for data and reporting. We all know what data and reporting looks like if they want it to look like it. Let me look at the VAERS report. Let's go further down here. What I'm concerned about and what everyone should be concerned about is the newest expansion that is happening as of March. I believe it's March 17th, 2024. So as of right now, Bill C7 was the expansion for MAID in 2021 for people whose death wasn't reasonably foreseeable. That was track 2 of MAID. Okay, because there is one track you can die on or second track, and we're going to get into what that means. But Bill C14 was the recent bill that the MPs put forward, and it was not approved. This was to prevent the sunset clause, which is to allow people with mental health to access it. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of different things. Let's go right through it. Let's talk about the eligible criteria now for March 17th, 2024. They are revising the law and making MAID eligible criteria. Now, when you go through here, there's a full breakdown on the website I'm also going to give you guys access to. By 18 years old of age or older, they have the decision-making capacity. Be eligible for publicly funded healthcare service. I mean, you have to have healthcare to be able to access MAID. Make a voluntary request that is not the result of external pressure. Here's where I get nervous about this portion of the verbiage, because we are also adding in the mature minors, which are children under the age of 12 with parent consent. I cannot help but think there are people in this world that will abuse that. So when somebody says the request is not that result of external pressure, that is concerning for me for individuals under the age of 18, depending on the situation they're in and the parents. And I think that's more than acceptable to bring up as a concern for. They need to give informed consent to receive MAID, meaning that the person has consented to receive MAID after they received all of the information needed to make this decision, which is wild. Because anybody in their right mind, I don't believe would want to die if they knew there was a way out, a new way to heal, a better way to live. But based off of the verbiage I'm hearing from others who experience it with doctors, it seems like the doctors are pushing it themselves. They need to be in an advanced state of irreversible decline in capacity and incapability. So be in an advanced state of irreversible decline and capability. Okay. Okay, we'll get to that. Have enduring and intolerable physical and psychological suffering that cannot be alleviated under conditions the person considers acceptable. Okay, well, here we go, people. As an individual who was given the labels, post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, postpartum depression, as well as, what's the other one? Oh, traumatic brain injury. Okay. That means I technically qualify for this. Oh, hearing loss as well. Okay. That is terrifying, because what that sends a message to everybody else who is struggling with mental health It sends the message that you no longer have to try. It sends the message that you no longer have to put the effort in to stay on the face of this earth, or you shouldn't even want to when there's an easy way out. That bothers me. That bothers me a lot because there are so many people that we lose to suicide on a regular, ongoing basis in our community. Forget the civilian population, just in our community. To think that others would want to push and promote suicide as an option instead of handling depression, instead of handling the thoughts that come in your head. They're telling you to give up. The Canadian government is telling those who struggle with mental health to give up. It is easier. And people are going to argue, no, Kelsi, if somebody wants to die, they should have the right to die. Not on my taxpayers' dollar. No, they don't. Kelsi, if somebody is struggling so hard with depression that they can't fathom getting out of bed again, you don't know what that feels like. Yes, I do. I've been right there. And if somebody would have given me the option in 2009 to take MAID, I would have. Thank God no one did. Isn't that what's wild? You have to remember this, right? I'm somebody who's talking about mental health, talking about it because I've been there and I've walked this walk and I've gotten to the other side and I've seen the light and the hope that is there. But when the government tells you it's easier to die than it is to live in Canada, we have a problem here, people. And the fact that nobody is paying attention to that is fucking concerning. The expansion of MAID means more people are eligible to die on your taxpayer dollar. More people will die because they're having a hard time. But what do we understand about suicide? We understand that it is impulsive. We understand that we take it when we think that we can't go any further, when we know for a fact that if there is the right person and the right team around and the right people, if somebody reaches out for just a little bit and just says, I'm here to help you, what do? We pick that person up and we help them and save them from themselves. Since when do we say it's easier to die? Why is that okay for you guys in Canada? Why is that okay for anybody? And if you're just saying, Kelsi, well, it's just hard. Sometimes life is hard. Life is fucking hard. But you get to be here. You get to walk and wake up and function. There are so many people who do not, that would literally do anything to be in your position. So to sit there and say that we should allow depression and mental health issues when we know that mental health affects your ability to make rational decision making. When we say that, when we know that for a fact that somebody with mental health is not thinking clearly, what do? We protect them from themselves. We put them on a 48-hour hold anytime they say that they're suicidal. That's what we do to protect people. But we've gotten a bad pattern here, right? We've gotten a bad pattern of just giving more medication and it not working. Then the person becomes suicidal. I can't do it anymore. Then more medication. And we get into this cyclical thing that happens because we're unwilling to look at other solutions because it makes too much money. Well, Kelsi, don't be that nihilistic. You mean realistic? Yeah, I digress. So here's the thing. When they're talking about the eligibility, they are talking and saying that this would have happened in March of 23, but it got tabled. It got tabled because enough people started to wake up and realize what it was. Here's the thing. When they break down what this looks like, they're also looking, just to be more specific, so you don't think I'm just assuming depression as an additive, but they say it. Within the domain of psychiatry, such as depression and personality disorders. It does not include neurocognitive or neurodevelopmental disorders or other conditions that may affect cognitive ability. That being said, we know that depression is curable. We understand that personality disorders are curable and manageable. The fact that we are allowing this to be a part of our law in Canada is fucking disgusting. You no longer need to have a fatal or terminal condition to be eligible. If your medical condition is a mental illness, you are not eligible until March 17th of 24. But we know that they've been offering it to the mentally ill. We know because in hospitals in British Columbia, We've had individuals walk in and say they're suicidal, and instead of holding them to protect themselves, what do? They offered MAID. Yeah, awesome. Let's get into the procedural safeguards. I'm sure you guys are loving this episode. Before a medical practitioner administers medical assisted in dying, they must satisfy certain safeguards to make sure that you are safe. You have to have 2 independent medical assessments. Make a written request signed by independent witnesses. Know that you can withdraw anytime. Provide final consent before receiving MAID, and give an advance consent. If they don't meet the safeguards, well, we have a bit of an issue. But you also must meet them in the event that your death is not naturally foreseeable. There are 2 methods in Canada for MAID. Again, I'll provide where these links, where this information came from. Method 1, a physician or nurse practitioner will administer a substance that causes death, such as an injection of a drug. This is sometimes called clinician-administered medical assistance in dying. Or method 2, a physician or a nurse provides or prescribes a drug that the eligible person then takes themselves in order to bring about their own death. This is called self-administered medical assistance in dying. I'm sorry, there's so much wrong with all of that. The fact that you can just be a nurse practitioner, and actually in some different areas here, as I've been reading and gathering data, you can also be a little bit lower statute of that as well. You don't have to be one of those, which is also terrifying. Not to administer, but you can also be a social worker and provide the statements needed to get MAID pushed through, which is, again, so they're working really hard to not include things like neurocognitive or neurodevelopment disorders, but this is what's wild to me. So you're telling me that somebody with depression can get killed by the Canadian government faster than somebody who has Huntington's, Parkinson's, or a neurocognitive disorder such as dementia, because they are not considered mental health, but you will have to wait in the 2-year restriction because those aren't considered mental health illnesses. Well, we know that Parkinson's is much harder to heal from than depression. We know that Huntington's is much harder to heal from than depression. Oh, and so is dementia. Shit, right. But let's kill the people that can actually have the potential to heal faster. Boom. All right, let's move on to the next part. Feel like you guys are going to get a kick out of this episode because I sure am. All right, let's get into a little more here. Forgive me, guys. Give me a second. Okay. This is why I don't believe it should be allowed at all. Things like this. On December 15th, 2022, the government of Canada announced our intention to introduce new legislation related to the medical assistance in dying. It would seek an extension of the temporary inclusion of eligibility for persons whose solely underlying medical condition is mental illness. On February 2nd, 2023, the government of Canada introduced legislation for former Bill C-39, and on March 9th, 2023, the bill received royal assent. A temporary exclusion was extended until March 17, 2024. This was to get provinces and territories to prepare for the expansion they are expecting for the amount of people with mental health issues to walk in and say, kill me, please. So that's insane. And to consider this, the Special Joint Committee's review on MAID, as well as its application, and to develop key resources to help assessors, because we know there's going to be an influx of people who want to use MAID because it is a way out of life, and Canada is good with that. I'm not good with that. I'm never going to be good with that. Let's get into a case here about an individual. And, well, it made me struggle. I'm not going to lie. It was an eating disorder. It was anorexia, this individual I'm speaking about. And, you know, they were speaking about some of the data and some of the stats in here. And the thing that got me about this was that the Canada's Justice Prime Minister in all of this stated a line here that honestly, it made my skin crawl. After all of the data and things that we've seen, so more than 30,000 people have died with MAID in Canada since 2016. More than 10,000 of them in 2021 alone. Okay, so let's put that into perspective. 30,000 since 2016, and then another boom, 10,000 in 2021. And this happened when the expansion of people whose death was not reasonably foreseeable. So we know now that at that point, you didn't have to be terminally ill to access this, right? So people started utilizing this at a higher rate, a huge rate, a burden to the system, a burden to the taxpayers, or as some people will say, well, a compassionate way to end their life. But I see that when you give people an out and don't have them work for it, and I don't mean, well, Kelsi, that's insensitive. They could have stage 4 cancer and not be able, there's no foreseeable way out. Okay, but then why aren't we talking about more and better palliative care? Why aren't we talking about preventative medicine that prevents cancers and is early scan detection? Why aren't we talking about healing people or having people so healthy that these illnesses are not growing at a rate that we can't control the way they are? Why aren't we looking at a better way of living? Instead of saying, Kelsi, you're not being compassionate because you don't think it's okay for these people to die at their own hands or with the doctor's hands. It's not that I'm not being compassionate. I'm saying we can do better in order to not even have to have this conversation. Anyway, moving on. After the change in legislation, about 98% of the assisted deaths in 2021 were people deemed near their natural death. What does that even mean? Because based off what I'm seeing here is the government thinks that people that are have depression and fibromyalgia and that struggle with personality disorders, well, they're deemed not near their natural death, but we can just let them die. I just think this whole thing, as you guys can tell, just frustrates me beyond all get out. The thing that he said that made my skin crawl and made me so concerned was, so far, nothing I see would suggest that we need to worry about having gone too far. That is Canada's Justice Minister, David Lametti. The system is going too fast. The system is moving this too fast. And I know there's organizations like Dying with Dignity, and they organized 10,000 letters to the government, you know, saying this is what we need. We need to be pushing this. No, I don't think we should be pushing this, and I don't think it should be accessible. Now, more often than not, I see so many people who have issues that are curable. Anorexia, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. But to cure all of these requires a significant amount of effort by the person and individual. And if they're not willing to put that effort in, they're not willing to do different things, it's unfortunate. But ultimately, they've already succumbed with a victim mentality. And I'm not saying that it's not hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. It took me over a decade, but I'm saying it's doable. So in 2021, the most recent available data, and this is, you know, arguably recent, but we've got some other points here. 10,064 people died through medical assistance and death, and about 3.3 of those deaths in Canada that year. That compared to the 4.5% in the Netherlands and the 2.4 in Belgium. That's where they've had legal MAID since 2002. But we are seeing it increase in 2022. I spoke about this on Pierce Morgan, and we had a big conversation about it there. And honestly, it's rising. It's rising. The death rates are rising because you're making it available. It's like anything else, like downtown on the east side. When you make open air drugs available, people are going to do the drugs, right? Okay. All right, Kelsi, calm down here. Calm down. All right, let's talk about a specific case. Guys, let's talk about something with a specific person. I had a individual on the show, Alicia Duncan, and I spoke about her at the very beginning and she is one of the two daughters of Donna Duncan. And I got to tell you, after spending quite a bit, try that again, with quite a lot of time, it's really heartbreaking to have had those conversations and know that Canada is actually allowing people to end their life in a fairly short period of time. And so, again, as I stated before, this is going to be, I'm probably going to have missed something. I'm probably going to have jumped over something, but I need you guys to know that regardless of your thoughts on this episode, there's real people attached on the other side. There's real people who have experienced real hurt and real loss because the government gave their family members, when they were at their most vulnerable points, their most weakest moments, the opportunity to end their life. So don't blame me if you're pissed off. Go blame the government. So March 17th, the law is changing, as I stated before, to include the mentally ill, mature youth, 12 years old, and down to 12 years old with parent consent. They're also looking at a solution and utilizing it for people with pensions. Let's talk about it. When I spoke to Pierce Morgan, I was speaking to him about some documents that were leaked to me. And these documents were including a slideshow. Now, the slideshow itself was published with the Daily Mail on July 1st in the UK. And I made sure to post a link in the show notes to the episode where I break it down and we talk a little bit about it. And it essentially was a slideshow that was given by Fraser Health in British Columbia. And Fraser Health is my healthcare system. Lovely. They had sent out a slideshow to a pension group in British Columbia, not necessarily individuals who were struggling with mental health, not necessarily individuals who were close to dying or had an incurable disease. These were people who simply were just pensioned out. They pensioned out. They were going to relax, enjoy the rest of their life. And it was a slideshow where they broke down, and I will put it in the show notes for you so you can all see. They broke down why MAID was an incredible new ad and that this is how you can access it. This is what it looks like. This is the track system. And this is how you can ask for it in a hospital. The reason it got brought to me is because some individuals who were at a church brought it forward to their pastors, and then they brought it to me. And they're saying, hey, Kelsi, I'm concerned. I'm from Europe. I was around towards the end of the war, and I remember a lot of the same verbiage. I remember a lot of the exact same idea, which was the vulnerable portion and population needed to go. And it kind of blew my mind because when you hear that from somebody that was around during that time, it is jaw-dropping and it shakes you to your core. It makes me realize I'm not going crazy, that there is an agenda to harm people for a financial benefit. Now, the doctors aren't making the benefit. The government is making the benefit. So let me preface with this. Doctors themselves, yes, even though some of them, and there are a few, and we know who they are, have been advocating it on behalf of, the government to their patients, whether that's because they truly believe in it or not, or have just been asked to bring it up. They are not the ones that are receiving the funds. Where the funds are actually being saved are on a government level. So we went through this with Alicia, and we discussed the executive summary around the net financial impact of providing MAID under the current legislation, Bill C-14 in 2021. Now, this is taking a look, and I'm going to break it. I'll read it to you, and then I'll break it down for you, those that are just listening. It represents the net financial impact of providing MAID in 2021 under the current legislation set out in Bill C-14, which used a baseline for cost estimates. The predicted gross reduction in healthcare cost amounts to, are you ready for this number? $109.2 million. While the cost of administering MAID is roughly $22.3 million. So that means that the difference between the two represents the net cost reduction for the provincial governments is $86.9 million. The Canadian government is going to save 86.9 well, they saved $86.9 million in the biggest year that MAID was brought to Canada. In 2021, where 10,000 people, 10,064 to be exact, were killed in 2021, the government, by using MAID, saved $86.9 million. Yep, there's your financial incentive right there. Kelsi, you're going crazy. You think everyone just wants to benefit and profit off of people, because they do. Stop. Come on, people. So that's fun. That's really great. Love that. 86.9. Follow the money, baby. Follow the money. All right, let's talk about Donna. This woman was amazing by the sounds of it. Alicia spoke so highly of her mother, and she was a psychiatric nurse. She was what sounded like a leader in her community and just one hell of a mama. And unfortunately, due to a car accident, Donna developed some issues. And once the issues arose, she decided to reach out and apply for MAID. She did this without her, she did it within 2 months of her car accident. So she hit her head. Nobody really paid attention to decide, okay, maybe she'll have a long-term traumatic brain injury or something that needs to be worked on. And it took them over 18 months, Donna, 18 months to see a head specialist, but 24 hours to die. Donna, within 2 months of hitting her head in a car accident, decided to use MAID to end her life. That is wild, because talk about a conflict of interest. Donna was a psych nurse, guys. She died by MAID. She had 3 doctors assess her for MAID. 3. A nurse practitioner was the one who administered it. And listed on her vital stats was muscle deterioration due to cachexia, which is a wasting disease with frailty, central sensitivity syndrome, fibromyalgia, curable. And she was approved under track 1, as far as we know, and as far as her daughter assumes. And 10 days later, after being approved, which is wild, because in the on track 1, which we're going to break down here, you can actually you can be bumped to 24 hours if it's considered imminent death, meaning they're not going to make you wait the 10 days. They're going to bump you to 24 hours. So that's so far what it looks like. Now, prior to the accident, Donna had never even taken Tylenol. She was somebody who used essential oils to heal. She was a more of a woo-woo kind of grounder. But since the car accidents, her symptoms began. When COVID happened, she was highly isolated after a head injury. She was then hooked on lorazepam and Ativan, and she became addicted, which we know is a benzo. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I can see that going swimmingly. The government and Fraser Healthcare will not release her MAID assessments. Now, everybody else can get access, but her family can't for whatever reason. Here's the thing. Her daughter's got an emergency injunction to take her for another psych eval. But because Abbotsford Regional Hospital, where she had worked, conflict of interest, that's no psych eval done, no one available. So somebody had to assess her over the phone. Do you guys hear what I just said? They took her to the hospital where she had worked, conflict of interest, check 1, boom. But because there wasn't even a psych available, because of how little we have available for psychiatric care in British Columbia and Canada, somebody assessed her for her right to have access to MAID over the phone. Do you know how wrong that is? That's like doing what a lot of doctors did during COVID, which was continue to prescribe medication like blood pressure or blood thinners, because they wouldn't see their patients So they would prescribe them over the phone without checking their blood pressure or doing a general check. Insane. I'm sorry, just insane. So let's talk about the tracks here. So there's 2 tracks that you can be eligible under for MAID in Canada. Track 1 refers to the procedural safeguards applicable to request for MAID made by a person whose natural death is reasonably foreseeable. So for track 1, within 10 days, and you can have the actual option to be bumped to 24 hours if you're approved under track 1. Track 2 refers to the procedural safeguards according to a request. Okay, apparently we have balloons on the screen. Sorry about that, guys. Track 2 refers to the procedural safeguards applicable to a request for MAID made by a person whose natural death is not reasonably foreseeable. That means that we don't know if that person's going to die. That just means that somebody's going through a hard time. That's what that says to me. It means that we don't know that that's good. Death is going to be certain, but we know that it's going to be potentially at the end of life, but we don't know when the end of life is going to be. So that's what's crazy to me, because there are 2 tracks. And the thing about the 2 tracks is that Donna sounds like she was on track 1. And like I said, her daughters aren't even able to get access to her medical documents. So this is the educated assessment or assumption that her daughter had made to myself on the Brass and Unity podcast, with that episode coming out with Alicia Duncan. So I'm going to go with that reference point there. But let's talk about somebody where it looks like, from what we are able to gather, not only from ourselves, but from Alicia and her family members who have knew who this individual was, because they were also asked, family was asked to testify at the Senate hearing about MAID, because people are concerned that their family members are being killed without their knowledge. And that's kind of what's wild. So there was an individual that received medical assistance in dying on July 26, 2019, when MAID was still reserved for those whose death was foreseeable. This is saying at this time, right around the same time in 2019, when MAID was being offered by Veterans Affairs to veterans, which we had the audio recording for, they were then also offering it. The government was then also offering it clearly because somebody was killed using it when his death was not foreseeable. So now this individual clearly did not meet this criteria. He did not have a foreseeable death. He struggled with reoccurring mental health crisis, but he always seemed to recover. Okay. This individual had hearing and cognitive disabilities. Okay. I have a hearing disability. I wear hearing aids. So check 1. And I also qualify under the depression standpoint. Check 2. Now, this individual had episodes of depression, but lived independently. Okay. Following with the police wellness check, he was involuntarily admitted under the Mental Health Act in British Columbia, initially diagnosed as suicidal. Boom. Number 1. That would then automatically exclude this individual from being a MAID candidate because he was suicidal and it was documented, which means we are supposed to protect people from themselves at this point. He was soon after deemed capable of requesting MAID. Tell me how. This is what I'm talking about. The definitions are so vague. People are falling through the cracks here. Let me continue. He received euthanasia 40 days after his admission, against the objections of his family, who were informed only 4 days prior to the procedure, the MAID procedure that man will walk into a hospital and never walk out of again. His family was told 4 days before. This occurred under the early legal framework where disability was not sufficient for eligibility and the RFND was a necessary requirement. And the healthcare authorities stated that the laws allowed those who are on a trajectory toward death in a wide range of circumstances to receive MAID and gave the family no specific diagnosis as a basis for his qualifications. That's it right there. How Canada is using this. People are pushing this, and they're pushing it to vulnerable people who don't reach out to their family members or have anyone to talk to. They're banking on using this on people who don't have support networks. They're banking on using this on people that after they drove them into the ground over COVID, took their businesses away, took their bank accounts away, wondered why people are struggling with depression like we've never seen, while the suicide rates are skyrocketing, while interest rates are through the roof. They go, hey, you know, it's a really good time. Seems like a really good time to offer up a solution for Canadians who are struggling. You know what that's going to look like? We're going to fucking kill you. How's that? That's what that's going to look like. And you can say, Kelsi, you're being a bit, you know, you're not being sensitive again, and you're not being empathetic, and you're being very upset. If this stuff here doesn't upset you, this stuff doesn't get you going in the morning, this doesn't go, we have a problem here. What does? What's the point? What are we all trying to do in this world if not be better versions, or show up for our community, or show up for others, or show up for those who are vulnerable and being taken advantage of to profit, which I showed you. I showed you that. That isn't my words. These aren't my words. That executive summary isn't my choice. $86.9 million savings when you use MAID instead of palliative care, preventative medicine, and actually helping others instead of over prescribing pharmaceutical medication. So, of course, if I had someone else here to debate this with me, I'm sure this would go longer and we would have a more nuanced conversation, and I welcome it. So in saying that, if you want to talk about this, you guys want to have a conversation about MAID, you guys want to dive deeper to help me see your side as why people should have access to this, why we should allow these laws into place with a government that has proven time after time after time after time after time that they're going to abuse it. They're going to take advantage of it. They're going to take advantage of those that are struggling in our country, and they're going to take advantage of those that actually can be saved. We can save people. We can heal people. I healed. I healed. You may not know my story. You may not know the nuance of it. You may not know how bad it got, how often it did, the depths of it. But I promise you, I'm a candidate for this. And if I was offered this at the most vulnerable moment in my life, and I had no one else to turn to, I had no family member to walk this back or talk me through or grab my hand, or a community, I had no self-worth, no love for myself, no want to be here, and somebody said, why not MAID? I wouldn't be here. We don't need to allow for this. We do not and should not allow for the government to step in and do what they're doing right now. And you may say, Kelsi, well, you've never had a terminal illness. And I pray I never do. Kelsi, you may not be struggling with something so painful on a day-to-day basis that you can't function anymore. You can't handle it. And I hear you. And I pray I never have to experience that. But I have had these psychological disorders that are so crippling that if you spent 1 hour in my head, you wouldn't want to be here either. But you can heal. That's the thing this doesn't tell you. This here, that's not what that says. That says give up. That says quit. That says stop trying. This says don't even bother. Walk into a hospital and end your life. That's what that says. Don't be a burden on your family. Don't be a burden on the system. Don't heal. Don't try. Don't reach out. Don't eat different. Don't watch different things. Don't change your habits. Quit. You're not worth being here. You're not worth healing. Why would anybody want to help you heal? That's what that says. That's what MAID is. It isn't some compassionate, don't get it twisted. Do not get it twisted. Do not let them manipulate you again. You know what I'm talking about. We don't need to get into that. You've seen what they're capable of, how easy it is to manipulate the mind, how easy it is to slow drip. Do not let them use your greater good, your compassion, your empathy, your heart. Don't let them use it against you and tell you it's okay to start killing kids down to the age of 12 because they're depressed. When we know that the depression rates are the highest they've ever been, that North America is the most medicated population on the globe. We take more antidepressants than we take vitamins. We eat more McDonald's than we eat apples. We literally do this shit to ourselves because we have been told these are the right things to do. Don't allow them to tell you that MAID is compassionate and empathy. It's not. They've shown that they're abusing it. And they're tying family members' hands behind their backs and saying, we're going to throw them in and you're going to watch them drown. And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. So I've thought about this every which way to Sunday. I cannot tell you how much I've thought about this. If you want to have that conversation, you guys want to talk about MAID, you want to debate it, I am here and I'm happy and let's go. I'm open. You can email booking@brassandunity.com. I'm deadly serious here. But for a single second, while you're sitting there listening to this, either enraged or ecstatic or whatever, or informed or just confused or just frustrated or angry, any of those feelings you're feeling, I feel them too. I'm confused. I'm dumbfounded how this country I serve for could offer vulnerable individuals a way to die instead of a way to live. I've seen both sides. I understand both of them deeply. But I will always come out the other side and saying that MAID should never be allowed legal here. It shouldn't be allowed legal anywhere. And yes, sure, there are compassionate cases. I'm sure of it. But what Canada is doing, it's not about compassion and empathy. They're abusing the rights to make laws. And they are abusing the rights to expose young youth to this. As I leave here, if you think I'm kidding and you think that I'm like, well, Kelsi, how are they exposing it to young youth? Well, Simon's Department Store is a department store similar to like the Bay or otherwise. And they actually utilized somebody who was enacting MAID in a commercial to sell their home goods and tell them how wonderful it is to die. Well, those commercials are seen by our young, incredibly impressionable teenagers who are already struggling with body image, self-love, self-acceptance, depression, personality issues. My God, I don't know how a teenager nowadays isn't. But we are the grown-ass adults and we need to start acting like it. And we need to start protecting those that are getting exposed to this and filling their minds with the idea that they are better off dead than doing the work to heal and to live the life that they've been given. So again, guys, thanks for listening to my very first solo episode. Can't wait to hear what you think. Please like, subscribe it, share. Again, poke holes, do whatever you guys want to do. If I missed something, let me know what I missed. But I can promise you, if I miss it here, it doesn't mean that I don't know about it. It just means that, you know, this is a lot. So my episode with Alicia Duncan will be out soon as well, where we dive deeper into this. And yeah, I truly believe that Canada is murdering people and we can do better. We can. If you guys have ever thought of using MAID and you're in a position where you feel like you want to end your life, please stay with us. Please do not do the thing that you don't need to do. You can heal. There is light at the end of every single tunnel, and you have to remember, in the darkness, in the black is really just made up of a million different particles of light. There is light. You have to look for it. Some days are harder than others, but you can heal from this and you can move forward and you will get better. If you need help, please call 988. Please remember that you cannot fill, and none of us can fill the gap and the hole when you are not here. Nothing will be easier. It will only be harder. And the ripple effect that your suicide will leave will be insurmountable for everyone that was in your life. It gets hard, but I promise you it's worth living. Every single day, it is worth living. Please stay with us. You matter. Thank you guys so much for listening.